Hey everyone, it's old rugged nerd here, coming to you live from the basement of, well, I guess the dungeon of the home station. Gonna go over a couple things that we've been working on. I do, as a hobby, terrains for miniatures. One of my favorite miniature series of games is Mech Warrior, BattleTech, those types of games, just where you're playing with 31st century combat with robots. I've played the hex-based version. I've played the WizKids HeroClix style. We play role-playing style, as we just kind of mix-mash all together. There's also a Total Warfare, which is using the mechs like Warhammer. So that said, I was just going to go over kind of the primer of what are the stuff that you need if you want to get into miniature and terrain making. And we're just going to start from left to right here and go over the a quick list. So, of course, there are paints. These are acrylic paints, some of which are actually 15 years old, but they still work just fine. I think I got most of these over at Michael's and or Hobby Lobby. But acrylic paint is what I use primarily for my terrains. It stays on very well. It's pretty easy to work with, easy to mix, blends well, and lasts forever if you're not going to be going through it very quickly. And I got 3 paint mixing trays and a myriad of brushes. We've got Games Workshop detail brushes, tank brush, large brush. These different brushes we use for different specific types of either detailing or dry brushing. And then I got these bigger paints for schlacking on the bigger portions of the black paints and the grays and browns and your kind of primer level base coats. And then I love this brush right here. This one is really, really good for dry brushing. If you're doing a lot of area, you just need to do really fine touches on it. This is just a round horsehair brush from Citadel scenery brush. So anyway, so I got a whole bunch of different styles of brushes so I can work in and out of different types of crevices, spaces, sizes of contact. I've got my paint mixer, a couple of bowls, and then this big bucket I use for if I'm doing what's called flocking. So flock is the fine grain painted. I use sawdust for that if you're trying to do these little granules. I'm going to jump ahead real quick just so you can see the textured finish on the ground for these things. That is made of sawdust that's just dyed with paint and sifted to make it very fine. And then so I would use these buckets for that. So this bucket I'd fill with sawdust. I'd add my paints to get the right color that I wanted, and then I would take all of that and I would sift that through this sieve here into one of my bowls, and then you end up with these different types of flock. I've got dark green, I've got a grass green, I've got these for sand. If I mix these together with some of that green, I get a kind of a blended texture if you're looking like an early spring or late fall. And then this one I thought was really fun. You get sponges. These regular, I don't know, these were like $1 back when I got them. And I used a portion of that to make this tree flocking, or for bushes. You can clump this stuff together. So basically, I put the chunks of the styrofoam in a spice grinder or a coffee grinder, and it chops it down to these chunks, and then I just dyed all those little chunks and spread it out and broke it back up on wax paper after painting, getting it dyed with the paint, mixed it all up, and then just let it sit there and dry. I've got this wiring, this 24 gauge 100-foot green wiring that you can actually spool up on itself to make these really cool trees, which I then just covered with a little base coat of, I think it's just wall spackle that I watered down that I'm going to then prime. But I mean, the detail on here is actually pretty cool. Kind of hard to get on the camera, but this is just twisted up wire, and it looks a lot like a tree. It's kind of cool. It's got the roots and everything, and then you just put those on a little metal base. I just bought some metal punch tokens that I use. They were the perfect size. I think those are 1.5 inches. And then there's this coconut fiber basket. These things are like $2, but you can just pull this off in strands and clump that together to make bushes, tumbleweed style. You can actually smash it together really well. You can also add that onto these trees in little fibers. You spray this with spray adhesive, and then put some of those fibers on there, and they make even tinier branches, so it looks really cool when you then spray those branches and roll that in the tree flock and the bushes, and you end up with a really cool, authentic looking tree. I've got 3 styles of sand. So I've got my main rocks, right? And literally I got this out of like a volleyball court and then just let it soak in some bleach water so it get really clean, right? Because who knows what's been done in that sand. But anyway, so you soak all the sand and clean it up, but then you separate it out. So I had a big sifter. I think it was just a colander that I used to get these bigger rock chunks out. and then this is what was left from that after the bigger gravel pieces come out, and then I put that through the fine sifter over here, and then that gives me this really, really, really fine sand, which is great for if you're doing trails and stuff like that. It's the right granularity. And then these you can actually pile up around bigger rocks out of your backyard, and you end up with some really cool like little rock fixtures at the base there. So you can see at the bottom left corner of the screen, there are those tiny rocks that have been glued into place, and it just adds a nice little effect, little details, and things like that. So that's our sand. And then this was actually kind of fun to work with. I got some really thick cardboard that two pieces that I glued together, and then it's kind of hard, I mean, you might be able to see it there, but basically if you take a thin razor blade and bend it at a slight bend, and you can saw off this at angles. And as you're sawing it off at angles, this cardboard starts to take this kind of like a platform shape, and now it kind of looks like a rock pad, which I've used for my Tatooine style house. Anyway, yeah, and so this is a half of a semicircle of styrofoam, and then this here is an electric outlet, and this outlet base I literally just again shellacked with a little bit of drywall to give it some texture, and now I've got my kind of like Tatooine house with some windows in there that is going to be primed. So these styrofoam semicircles are great if you're using like dome type. You can blend them up, and like I just cut a chunk out of this one to get it to fit in and take on that half dome look on the house here. And then I've got these other blue outlet boxes for construction that, I mean, a little bit of ingenuity, and you can attach some wiring, some piping, and you end up with some pretty cool looking futuristic structures, warehouses, hangars, and stuff like that. So and then these are some of the finished terrains, and all the terrain I make is out of that pink styrofoam Pink Panther foam. It is really easy to cut a number of different ways. You can use razor blades and stuff like that on it. You end up with these like little tears sometimes though if you're not using a really, really, really sharp knife. So I ended up investing in one of these little Woodland Scenics. I think this thing was like 20 bucks. And then they have actual table saw style ones that just sit there and it's mounted this way. And you can use a guide, make really clean, even cuts with your stuff. I think those things start running around about $100. But this is just a heat wire cutter. So basically the electric charge goes through and that wire cuts through the styrofoam like butter. But it's freehand, so it's a little bit, it can be a little bit nuanced, but it works great for these terrains. And you can see here the different terrains that I've made. They have different styles of edges and sizes. Some of them have same flocks, some have different. Others I've done a little touch up with like sand here in the bush, off of the tree flocking that we made. The edges on here, most of them are stone. I really like that style and that look, but there's a myriad of different ways you can do that. There's a lot of groups out there and a lot of tutorials out on YouTube how to make terrain. Highly recommend looking at those. And yeah, just if this is something you're interested in, it's a great hobby. It's a great way to pass the time. It's a great way to spend time with the kiddos that are interested in these types of games. And then also, one of these pieces costs like 20 to 30 bucks out in the market. And with a weekend and just some interest, some effort, and some trial and error, you can start making these things for $1 or $2 all in. So it's a lot more effective and cost-effective way, and it's a real fun way to try and make this stuff up on your own. But anyway, so I'll leave it at that. If you got any questions, hit me up in the comments. Like, subscribe, The Rugged Nerd. Catch us doing this type of stuff as a family, or catch us on the road as we're traveling around in the camper trailer and playing these games while we're out there. So anyway, stay awesome and take care of each other. Bye.